We're going to break down this gap gun now. First thing we're going to do is remove our extension whip with the adapter block on that we just finished flushing. We know that there's no chemical in it, so we can safely disassemble this without worrying about foam mixing, the gun crossing, and creating more difficulties during this. So, B-side, we don't have to remove this nipple from the hose. We can just remove that from the gun. So that's going to be done by holding that in the middle and removing it from the gun. Once we remove this, we're going to hang the line up and let it dry. We can flush the residual pump lube out of the extension whip with brake clean. Some of you guys might want to then flush this with glycol ether or gun cleaner and then brake clean. Either way, we want this extension to be clean and dry when we put it on. We want this to go back together and be exactly the way it came out of the box from Graco, ready to go on day one. So our A side is a smaller fitting. These are JIC fittings. They do not need to be that tight. You make these things too tight, they crack, and then they leak, which is exactly what we don't want. This is a high-grade exclusive. We tape all three hoses together so that it's easy to spray without having too many hoses in the way. So we're just going to cut this tape. Snips are a great way to do it, because we don't have to worry about cutting the hose or damaging anything as you might do with a razor knife. Our extension whip is removed. There's a little bit of residue in there on that side. This is a pig mat. They're chemically absorbent. Great way to do this. Protects your bench top, makes cleanup much more simple. So we're just going to tape this and we're going to hang it right here on our old hose reel. And let that drip out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the screens. I'm going to remove the A-side screen, see how it looks in here. Like I said, this was serviced recently. You guys really want to make sure that you're keeping up with your screens and making sure that they're clean. If you know how to read the gauges on your foam machine, that will tell you what's happening with your material and with your screens in the gun. If your A-side pressure becomes higher than your B-side pressure, you probably have a clogged screen. And I want to show you these screens. They're an extremely fine mesh. It does not take a lot to clog these up. There's a little bit of residue right here, some A-side crystals. It's a screen, but its basic principle is a filter, and that is to filter out any particles so that they do not get into your mixing chamber. I also like to keep my A-side parts and my B-side parts separate, even though the gun has been flushed. A-side screen retainer or screw is always indicated by these notches around the hex. The B-side does not. It looks like a regular hex bolt. So anytime you see these grooves or notches cut into the A-side, into the fitting, that is designated for the A-side. That helps to keep cross-contamination to a minimum. Pull out the B-side screen now. It's got a little bit of crud on it. All in all, not too bad. We've seen different types of fillers used in the B-side from different manufacturers that can leave deposits on your screens. So don't think that just because B-side doesn't get hard, you don't have to check your screens. You do have to check your screens. So we're going to remove the cap here. Now we're going to start breaking down the gun. These two bolts are cross bolts. They hold both sides of the gun to the center here. It's a little tighter than I can do it by hand. tighter than I can do it by hand, but all in all, it's not that tight. You're dealing with small bolts, precision machine surfaces. This stuff does not need to be that tight. It's not holding the wheel on your car. Lots of grease. Grease is your friend with an air purge gun, with any foam gun really for that matter. Grease keeps things from sticking, galling when it goes back together, makes assembly and disassembly much easier. There again, grease, grease, grease. Anything that's greased will clean up exceptionally well. So this is the A side of the gun. This is your side seal. This is a side seal O-ring. That seals the fluid from this. One of the most common problems with assembling these guns is guys are too aggressive when they put the side seal back into this housing and it nicks or cracks the O-ring. You will know that happened as soon as you turn the valve on, because one chemical is going to be coming right out of the front of the gun. That's not fun to deal with. You do have to flush the gun, take it apart, put a new side seal O-ring in. Once you break the seal here, any residual fluid from our whip can run in and cross your gun over before you even pull the trigger. So it's very important to have the fluid evacuated from the gun before you open it up. And if you can see, I don't know how good our camera is, we do have some residual A-side contamination in the grease here. If you see how hard that is, that's grease. That's grease mixed with A-side that actually hardened. So even though this gun was functioning perfectly, it is definitely time for refresh. Give it a rebuild, get it ready to go. Next, we're going to remove this part of the fluid head. Again, this will probably be harder than my hand can turn. So we'll go to our nut driver here. Okay. Once you break that loose, these should be very, very easy to turn by hand if you've used grease during the assembly. If you don't use grease during the assembly, anytime you have a gun malfunction and A-side winds up getting in the threads, A-side is basically Loctite and it's gonna give you trouble.